our first. There we go. Great, thank you.
I'm sorry, Jennifer, I couldn't hear what you said because I got the little announcement. What did you say?
Well, I was just, I think Machu is turning it over for our project team, and you're our kickoff. So I was just making sure you were in the room.
I'm here. I'm ready.
All right, great. Do you want to get started?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just go ahead and jump on in, and we can all introduce ourselves on the next slide. So my name's Laura Lehman. I use she/her pronouns. I'm the senior environmental planner. It's been a long day at Parks and Recreation, and we're so pleased to be here to be able to share a little briefing on the restoration concept planning work for Crystal Springs Lake that's been going on. Next slide, please. So here we have the agenda for our presentation today. We have a number of slides, and then we think we'll answer most of your questions as we go through, but of course we'll save some time for questions at the end. We're going to start with a quick round of introductions for the project team, and we have a small group, so I'll let other folks make the call on whether we want everyone to introduce themselves. Then we'll give an overview of the existing conditions at Crystal Springs and at the lake and some of the relevant previous projects. We'll talk about the project goals and the work we've done to date, and then we'll take a quick look at next steps. So today here we have some colleagues from Parks and Recreation, as well as the Bureau of Environmental Services, as well as our fantastic consultant, Environmental Science Associates. So I'm just going to invite folks to introduce yourselves, maybe in the order that's on the slide.
Well, hello. My name is Jenna Stathopoulos. I use they, she pronouns, and I work in community engagement for Portland Parks and Recreation, and I am supporting Jennifer on this project.
And is Amy not able to join us this evening?
I think she just joined.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Amy, would you like to introduce yourself? Maybe she's not quite here yet. We can come back to Amy. And Kathy is not here, I don't think. So Jennifer?
Yeah, hi everybody. Jennifer Devlin. I'm with the Bureau of Environmental Services. I do community engagement. And we're also don't have Rosalind Gray tonight, so I'll pass it to Steve.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm Steve Roloff, a principal landscape architect and landscape ecologist with Environmental Science Associates. And I've been assisting the city with the planning of restoration at the lake for several years. Thank you.
Great. I'm just going to check in with Amy. Are you connected, and do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. This is Amy Chumowitz. My apologies. I seem to be having some internet connections this evening. I'm a project manager with the Bureau of Environmental Services, and I fairly recently joined this project to be the project manager. So thank you. And thank you for having us at your meeting. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Super interested to learn more about the project. I know it's a beloved park and lake location for the whole district.
I realize we have one more team member in the room who's not listed on the slide, Caitlin Lovell. Caitlin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, you caught me chewing a bite of my dinner.
Sorry.
Sorry. I'm Caitlin Lovell. I also work with the Bureau of Environmental Services, and I previously oversaw all of the investments and restoration actions in Crystal Springs, but I've moved on to a new role. So I am supporting the team as they take on this last big project in Crystal Springs. I'm happy to be here today and really appreciate your interest in this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. Matthew, I don't know, do you want to have other folks in the room introduce themselves before we move on?
We could, there will be several people like join later. So how about we maybe save introductions after that?
That sounds fine.
Right.
In that case, we're ready for the next slide. I think Jennifer's going to take it over.
Great. So as you're all neighbors, they're near the Crystal Springs area. You probably know Crystal Springs Creek really well. It's spring fed, which provides cool water and a uniform flow year round to the creek. And just as a reference, the water comes out of the springs all in multiple places, but it's at 13 degrees C. So it's really cold. So I just want you to keep that figure in mind as we work through some of the slides and talk about some temperature issues that the spring is having. Or this Crystal Springs Creek is having. The springs are doing great. So Crystal Springs Creek is home to coho and Chinook salmon and steelhead, and those are listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. So they're fish that of concern. There's also freshwater mussels and lamprey in the Crystal Springs Creek, as well as you all know, it's just gorgeous habitats, full of bird life. And there's a lot of opportunities for people to interact with the creek as well. However, Crystal Springs has well-documented challenges, including fish passage and temperature issues that we're trying to address. So next slide. So project partners have been working on Crystal Springs for many years, so well over a decade, to replace 9 culverts. These are the orange dots here along Crystal Springs that were a problem for fish passage. They were removed or replaced or upgraded in some way. And then through Westmoreland Park, there was a large pond that ponded water and heated up the water. That was removed, replaced with the stream and wetlands and root wads and different things to provide fish habitat along that stretch. So these projects included many agency and community partners and different funding sources. Next slide. So some of the problems and how they get solved. So upper left-hand corner, you can see one of those 9 culverts. It's a corrugated metal pipe. The water is getting squeezed through there, which makes the velocity increase. And the solution to something like this is on the right-hand side. This was one of the Crystal Springs culvert replacements, where you've got, instead of a pipe for a fish to try to get through, you have a much broader opening, and you've got a rocky bottom that matches the stream bed. So it's like a cobbly, rocky bottom, so that fish just have a swim through condition. In terms of the lake, that Westmoreland Park, the Westmoreland Pond, you can see a before and after picture there. So the upper is the before picture where there was a pond at Crystal Springs at Westmoreland Park. Crystal Springs comes in from the left side. We'd go into the lake at a certain temperature, which I'm going to discuss with you in the next slide. It would get heated up in that pond, and then it would come downstream at that higher temperature. Now, on the bottom slide, the current condition is that the water comes in at a certain temperature, and then it just moves through the stream channel at the same temperature and exits at the same temperature. So it doesn't heat up through this stretch anymore. Next slide. So I'm going to just slow down here for a second. Remember that I said that the springs come out at 13 degrees C. And if you look at both of these charts, you'll notice that they start at 15 and go up. And we're going to, in a slide or two, you'll see a slide that includes the 13-degree area. So the red line is the water quality standard that we're trying to meet for Crystal Springs Creek, and that's 18 degrees C. The black line shows you, well, let's start with the blue line. The blue line shows you water that was coming in to the Westmoreland Pond back in 2012. And the upper line, the black line, shows you the water temperature of the creek as it left the pond. So on many days in July here, we're showing you that the pond heated up the water temperature 3+ degrees. And it's already coming in to the project area close to the standard. At the bottom chart, you can see that after the pond was removed, the black line and the blue line are following each other quite well, meaning that the upstream and downstream temperatures are the same going through this area. So the high temperature was corrected by this action. Next slide.
All right.
Okay, Steve, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Okay, so Jennifer was talking about the Westmoreland Pond downstream that is a completed project on Crystal Springs Creek. So we're going to come back now to Crystal Springs Lake itself, where we have a similar situation. We have a number of very cold springs that discharge into Crystal Springs Lake. As Jennifer mentioned, those springs are about 13 degrees Celsius. That ice, well, it's not ice cold, but that cold water comes into the lake basin. And because the lake is a shallow lake and it's oriented north-south, it absorbs that water is exposed to the solar radiation, especially in July, August, and early September. So the very cold spring water comes out of the springs. It's in the lake for more than a day is its residence time, and it gets heated up while it's in the lake. BES has recorded temperatures of 20 degrees in the lake, even moving upward toward 25 degrees in the lake. And then that warmer water is discharged downstream as it heads down Crystal Springs Creek. So we've taken some really cold water, we've warmed it up, and then sent it on downstream. So that's what this project is hoping to reduce the warm up of the water in the lake. And we're gonna show you how in our concept plan here in just a moment. Along with the warming water, there is an old dam that creates this lake. This is not a natural lake. It was formed by a dam that we think was about 1920s. So the dam is more than 100 years old. And it is in need of replacement. There needs to be a plan to replace the dam. There's been some geotechnical studies. It's in need of, and it's been getting ongoing maintenance, but at a certain point it will be at the end of its lifespan for a dam. Replacing the dam will have some permitting requirements that comes along with it, water temperature and fish passage requirements, and that will be a component of the project as well. Next slide, please. This is a chart of Crystal Springs Lake. So again, no project has been enacted here to help fix this. So we only have this existing condition temperature graph. And this is from 2014. You can see along the bottom axis, this is in August. So we've got August and then into, well, through September here. And on the left axis is temperature. So that dark blue line, that's at that 13-degree line. That red line is at 18 degrees. That is the state water quality standard. It's the upper limit of meeting the water quality standard. Really, we'd like to see temperatures below 18 degrees. And you can see here during this recording period in 2014, in that lighter blue line, that is the water discharging out of the lake. So it's well over 18 degrees through all of August, even reaching up at 22 degrees Celsius, and then it makes its way down as the solar radiation starts to wane going into September. So that's one of the key problems here is the warming water in the lake. Next slide, please. Laura.
All right. Yeah, thank you. We have one last piece here on the existing conditions. Steve mentioned that this dam has been at this location since at least 1920. This is one of two of the main outlets from the lake back down into Crystal Springs Creek. And the dam does not allow fish passage. And over the years that the dam has been in this location, it's required significant maintenance. So this project gives us a real opportunity to improve this outlet from the lake, both from a function perspective and from a maintenance perspective. Next slide, please. So this project has multiple goals that can address the needs of several stakeholders. The goals are to restore the environmental health and habitat at Crystal Springs Creek by reducing the water temperature from Crystal Springs Lake and improving the habitat along the creek and lake edges. removing, improving, or reconfiguring the dam that'll help reduce that residence time of the water in the lake that Steve was talking about. And removing invasive species with a special focus on yellow flag iris, which you probably have, many of you have probably seen it out there. And then there's, another goal is to maintain or improve the functionality of the rhododendron garden and the Eastmoreland golf course by preserving the aesthetics and the function at both of those locations, and by improving the irrigation intake for the golf course. There's also potential for this project to extend the life of some of the rock wall structures at the garden that have been a maintenance challenge. Next slide, please. I'm handing off to Jennifer.
Great, thank you. In 2019, we started working with project partners to explore a concept planning process to start addressing both the dam and the temperature issues. So here you've got a list. We worked with the Eastmoreland Golf Course and Golf Advisory Committee group, the Friends of Crystal Springs Rhododendron Garden. We did some work with Crystal Springs Partnership, the Native American Community Advisory Committee. We had the Bird Alliance of Oregon and Green Spaces Institute involved, as well as the Johnson Creek Watershed Council. This early concept planning included those stakeholders, and as we move further along in the project into design, we'd like to involve the neighborhood associations and other partners in the design process. Next slide. So again, kind of where we are in the project right now, we are just finishing up our concept planning phase, and we'll be talking to you specifically about how we're moving from the concept phase into the design phase. Next slide. And this is just a review of our stakeholder engagement on this project. So in 2019 and 20, which was when the pandemic began in 2020, we did some in the field tours. We did workshops we learned to use Zoom on. And then we shared some different concept designs with folks and were able to develop a kind of a single concept design that we shared with stakeholders in 2022. And then we got feedback from folks on that, and that is the one that we're going to be sharing with you tonight. After putting that concept plan together, we did additional work that the project needed and people were interested in. We conducted a biological evaluation and characterization of the site. We did some field work on presence of mussels in the pond, presence of aquatic insects, and then we also looked at a nesting bird survey. We did cost estimating, and then we developed some perspective visuals. And currently we're working on updating all those stakeholders that we've been working with since 2019, doing community briefings upon request like this one tonight. And then we're kind of pausing our process to start work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on the project. Next slide. Back to Steve.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, this is the combined concept plan, the Habitat and Water Quality Enhancement Plan. And as I mentioned before, what we're trying to do is prevent the water from heating up in the lake. And we had some temperature modeling performed by the United States Geological Survey, USGS. And what they found was the best way to help reduce temperatures in the lake or prevent rising temperatures is to reduce the residence time. So the water's coming out of the springs, it's spending time in the lake, it's getting heated up in the lake, and then it's moving on downstream, as I mentioned earlier. So what we want to do is shrink the sides of the lake so the water moves more quickly through the lake and discharges downstream. But we also want to be very cognizant of the functions and values of the golf course and the rhododendron garden. Both of those well-known and beloved Portland facilities count on views of the open water. So the rhododendron garden has some key viewpoints around the garden as you make your way on the peninsula and the island. There's a couple wedding venues that folks use. So we wanted to shrink the lake in a way that preserved those viewpoints and gave that same feeling of open water. On the golf course side of things, there are two very important golf holes, the 12th and the 17th. Those golf holes require an over-water drive from the tee box over to the green. So again, we want to preserve those open water, that challenge of those golf drives. So what we've done in this plan is sort of push in the edges of the lake to make the lake smaller, to reduce the residence time of the water, but to preserve the functions and values of the garden and the golf course. So when you look here at this drawing, some of the green areas, the sort of sketched green areas, are new land masses that are, in many cases, if they're green, they're planted with native vegetation. We have several, we're proposing several different native plant communities for this restoration project. And then the purple areas are actually land where the garden is getting some new land to do what they would like to do with that land, expand the rhododendron garden and the experience for their visitors. So we've preserved the open water views, we've expanded some of the garden areas. We're also trying to plant the south and west sides of the lake. And I'm sorry, I didn't mention this plan you're looking at here. North is to the left. So north is not up, it's to the left. So we're trying to plant some tall native trees on the west side of the lake and the south side of the lake and any of the lagoons that we can to help shade the water. What we learned from USGS is we want to shrink the lake, but we also want to try to shade the water where we can. This plan preserves the deepest area of the lake. The lake is only about 8 feet deep and it's the deepest point, but for habitat purposes, we're proposing not impacting the deepest area of the lake. We're kind of pushing in the edges in different areas. We have some neat aquatic planting areas that would be teaching areas. We heard from our friends in the Native American community that having access to some traditional aquatic plants would be very meaningful to them in their communities. The dam here would be replaced with a new modernized dam and a boulder spillway, so it'd have a more a nicer aesthetic to it than an old concrete dam. We'd be protecting some known salmonid spawning area downstream of the dam and the fishway. As Laura mentioned, there's two ways water leaves the lake. It comes over the dam or it comes down through an old, well, not old, but a fish passage channel that allows aquatic connectivity up into the lake. And then downstream of the lake itself is the Gulf Pond down in the lower left corner of this drawing. The Gulf Pond would be converted to a stream channel and wetland complex, so some really nice habitat with some trees also for shade. And then two other aspects of this project that are meaningful to the garden and the golf course are some irrigation improvements. The golf course irrigation system would be moved to a deeper area of the lake to prevent some sediment problems they're having with their irrigation intake. And the garden irrigation system would be maintained in place. Both entities draw from this water source. So again, we're protecting those open water views and experiences, but we're shrinking down the lake a little bit. We're improving habitat. We're restoring some wetland habitat and riparian forest, and we're creating some new land for the garden. Next slide, please. Okay, and during the process of developing this concept plan, we worked closely with folks from the rhododendron garden and folks from the golf course. As I mentioned, the garden staff expressed interest in having some additional land to work with to expand their garden a bit. The golf course really wanted to protect those flyover golf drives. Oh, another aspect of the plan I forgot to mention is along the golf course side would be snags and habitat wood in the lake for perching for raptors and for resting areas for amphibians and reptiles on the logs. And then, as I mentioned, using some native aquatic plants that have a long-term indigenous cultural use. Locust and wapato and cattail. You can see these 3 photographs of the 3 plants there. And next slide, please. Okay, so what this concept was, or an aspect of alternatives of this concept were modeled by USGS. And what we found was by shrinking the lake, we got immediate cooling benefits in the modeling because of the reduced size of the lake. The tree shading does provide some moderate benefits if we can get trees on the south and west side of the lake. This concept design would significantly reduce lake temperatures, especially under future climate change scenarios. So if we leave it as is right now, the lake will continue to warm as our summers get warmer. And then while this does not specifically, this concept so far does not exactly meet the state water quality standards, it moves very strongly in that direction. And when you start to look at the number of hours of a typical year when it might be over temperature, the hours are dramatically reduced. And taking a no action alternative looks like it would be devastating to Endangered Species Act listed species in Crystal Springs Creek, Johnson Creek, and then the lake itself would become quite warm. Next slide, please.
Great, thanks,
Jennifer.
Steve. Yep, gotcha. So, so we completed that concept design in 2022, and we were able to move forward then to develop preliminary construction cost estimates of $11.4 million. That, of course, will be refined as we complete the design work, include financial impact if there's any closure to the garden or the golf, include project management and construction oversight. We also worked with the community, particularly with the Crystal Springs Lake Partnership folks on wood duck and hooded merganser nest surveys as a volunteer opportunity. And we worked with some professional staff to do aquatic invertebrate surveys, and we worked with volunteers on that as well. We also developed 3 perspective visuals kind of based on that concept plan that Steve just showed you, and we'd like to show you 2 of those next.
All right, so this is a artistic representation of the drive on the 17th hole. You see the gentleman here in the tee box, and he's driving out toward, you see the orange flag in the distance that's on the green. You can see some water in between. He's hitting the drive over. In the current condition, there's more open water, but in this potentially restored condition, you can see that there is some wetland vegetation in the foreground, providing habitat and cooling. There's still open water in the midground. And then the golf green is left fully functional off in the distance there. And if we go to the next slide, please. This is a conceptual view from the garden itself, looking across the lake toward the golf course. You can see in the distance some of those nice habitat snags, the standing dead trees, large wood providing habitat along the shoreline there, native wetland, emergent and shrubby vegetation on the far side. And then in the foreground, you see some expanded garden planting area that the folks at the garden could plant however they see fit through an engagement process. And one thing we heard that the folks from the garden thought might be nice is to have some extra visual buffer from the golf course. So by creating a nice wildlife edge over on the far side of the lake from the garden, when folks are using the garden, they're looking out at a restored landscape. They're looking out at wildlife, birds, etc. instead of just seeing folks golfing on the other side. So a nice visual benefit. Next slide, please.
All right, so on this slide, we have an overview of some of the permitting factors and other factors in coordination that we'll need to learn more about and that will need to be addressed in order for this project to move forward. One of the things that we're going to need to learn more about is water rights requirements, both for improving the irrigation and for the changes to the dam. We'll need to make sure that the plans that come out of this process comply with all local, state, and federal permit requirements, especially for impacts to waters of the state and for work in the environmental overlay zones that are kind of locally administered. We'll have to think about how this work relates to the East Moreland Historic District and those requirements. And we'll have to look at nexuses that might exist with other potential projects, like the potential Reedway overcrossing, the Southeast 28th Avenue Green Street, and the new land acquisition by BES at 5631 Southeast 28th. That's shown here in the bright blue box. So that's directly adjacent to the golf course and very close to the garden and very close to this project. Next slide, please. So looking at some current and next steps for this project. Right now, the project team will be continuing to communicate with engaged stakeholders and sharing some of the information that we've shared out with you today, including the concept plan, the cost estimate, and the visuals. We'll also have a few other briefings with interested stakeholders. We have one more community group briefing this week that you already know about. And then we'll also be continuing to brief city leaders so that everyone is up to speed on the progress the project has made. And then we'll be coordinating with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to explore a Section 206 cost share feasibility study. And I'm just going to pause and invite Amy to say a few more words about that if she'd like, since she is our resident expert on that process.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So yes, looking forward, the city and the Army Corps of Engineers, we will continue our partnership. And really, this is a partnership to bring more money to the project. The Army Corps provides basically 65% of the project cost, and the city provides 35%. And where we are right now is the Army Corps completed what they call their Federal Interest Determination Report. And basically what that is, it's a look at the project to determine, is there an environmental restoration connection to the project? Yes, there is. So their conclusion with this report is there is an interest for the federal government, for the Army Corps, and they will continue to pursue a partnership with us. Our next step with them is to sign a federal cost sharing agreement. And at that point, we'll begin working on the feasibility study, which is basically an alternatives analysis. It'll take about 12 to 18 months to complete that. And during that time, we'll also comply with NEPA requirements. Those are federal environmental requirements. And at that point, then we'll start design. So design won't begin for at least 12 to 18 months. And next slide.
Great, and that's the end of our presentation. So I want to thank you all for your attention and your interest in this project. We'll be happy to take any questions that you have right now. And I also want to encourage you to stay in the loop as the project moves forward, to go to our website, which is shown here on the slide, and we can drop it in the chat. And there's a link on that website where you can sign up for email updates on the project. So that's what we have. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks so much. Fascinating project, and it sounds like it's building off the successes at Westmoreland Lake nearby. And I know Westmoreland considerably reduced like the width, and I see that's being proposed here. I guess I didn't quite realize there's so many flyover aspects on the Eastmoreland Golf Course, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, is there an impact, or what's the golf ball mitigation strategy, if any, there? Like, that surely has an impact over time, right?
Are you talking about a water quality impact from golf balls being in the water?
Yeah, like impeding flow, or reducing depth, or just yeah, water quality flow. I'm sure they add up over time, and they do go stray. I've seen several land on Bybee, so I know never not a perfect shot.
I think I sank a few into the lake myself, I'll confess. You know, I don't know the answer to that. Steve, do you know if golf balls present potential toxic conditions? I am guessing that they might take some of the balls out from time to time.
Yeah, and Amy, I don't know anything more on that. It's an interesting question, Machu, and there could be piles of golf balls down there. But Amy might be right that sometime there may be some golf ball harvesting that goes on. I don't know.
It is a really intriguing question. I'm going to do a little research on that. I'll get back to you.
All right, thank you. And I have like observed in this area like a lot of nutria. Is there any, does that factor into this plan at all, or is that just something that's just a fact of the lake? Or
Well, I'll jump in there, Machu. We do have beavers and likely nutria also that are throughout the Crystal Springs system and actually throughout Portland, really. There was quite a bit of beaver activity in the garden a couple of years ago, and we worked with garden staff to, when you walk there, you might see that some of the older rhododendrons are caged off now with metal fencing to protect from beavers. There's really no getting rid of beavers, so we generally plan our projects to be living with beavers projects. So we hope to, fill in some of the areas that include willows and plants that they like to eat, but that also just sprout back. So we're hoping that we can protect the rhododendron gardens and also increase habitat for beavers.
one thing I didn't realize, and thank you all for sharing this fact, is that the lake was created by dams that are constructed by people. And so I'm kind of wondering, not that we have satellite photography going back that far, but maybe some wisdom or historical knowledge of like what the site looked like before it was developed. And it sounds like it's being considered. I'm just curious if you discovered anything about how it might have been before.
Jennifer, do you want to, or it looks like Caitlin has her hand out.
Yeah, hi. Great question, Machu. We have historic BLM, Bureau of Land surveys done that are some really nice pencil drawings, basically. And the region shows that the entire system used to be a series of wetlands, and likely a lot of beaver dams and beaver ponds associated with it, but there was no actual open water depicted in that around the Crystal Springs Lake area. The other interesting thing that going way back, pre-human settlement, like really pre-human settlement, is during the Brett's floods, and even before that, they think that Crystal Springs was actually the primary drainage of Johnson Creek, that the floods actually pushed Johnson Creek over into its current location, and that Crystal Springs was the original drainage way of Johnson Creek. So a little bit of historical recreation, if you will, by our hydrogeologists, but for now, at least historically, there was no real open water. It was just a series of wetlands and drainage down to Johnson Creek.
Oh, that's great to know. I've always had such a curiosity about the geological formation of that part of Portland, all of it. So thank you for that context.
I will also add it, because it's so interesting to me. The springs that feed Johnson Creek are actually from an aquifer that originates all the way out to Powell Butte and the buttes east of I-205. And we typically see a 6-month lag time. So Crystal Springs Creek traditionally is higher water in the summertime, which is very unusual. But that is because it pushes through the aquifer. It actually has a really nice long 6-month residence time in the aquifer before it comes up through the springs. And what's nice about that, and the reason that this project becomes even more important, is because in the July and August and early September timeframe, where Crystal Springs Creek comes into Johnson Creek at that point is at its lowest flow. It's around 1 cubic foot per second. And Crystal Springs provides about 14 cubic feet per second at that point in time. So it forms the majority of flow for the lower mile of all of Johnson Creek at that point, and creates what's known as a cold water refuge in the Willamette River in the months of July and August. And we can trace that directly back to the flows from Crystal Springs.
Bill.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Very interesting. I just happened to have been at the Rhododendron Gardens earlier today, and I kind of want to follow up from what Machu is raising about the nutria. I noticed 4 nutria in the space of 5 minutes on Crystal Springs Lake, and a worker there was saying he thought there were about more like 24 total, and that they're digging dens in the embankments. And he was saying they really wanted to talk to BES about maybe trapping some, but just knowing that nutria are introduced species, are there negative environmental issues to having a lot of nutria there at digging into the embankments or not?
I guess is it kind of a point to still be researched? Because I think it's an important question with like indigenous lands and restoration before settlement. You know, like how do you restore the ecology and biodiversity and protect them? So anyways, it's a fascinating concept.
I don't know if this is Caitlin. I don't know if Laura wants to jump in as the parks rep here, but we've definitely heard anecdotal reports from golf course managers and parks, the garden managers, about nutria really creating a series of tunneling in the embankments that have required a lot of maintenance, both from the in and around the dam to make sure the dam itself isn't seeping around the edges. They've gone in and filled it with gravel and other things, but there's just sort of this regular day-to-day maintenance of chasing the tunneling effect of those nutria. And I know that the garden itself has required a number of instances where they've had to reinforce the walls that are around the lake, especially there in the North Lagoon. Not in the North Lagoon, the area down near the entrance and the arch bridge that's there. I forget what we're referring to that as. But the other interesting thing I used to run the Science Fish and Wildlife program for the city of Portland, so I have a lot of experience with beaver and nutria. Where we can actually encourage beaver to return, they tend to keep the nutria at bay. They don't completely eliminate the nutria, but they do provide, they're more dominant in the habitat, and so they will keep the nutria at a more manageable number. And we also think that with the sloping banks and the sort of the softening of the river's edge there, that it will result in less maintenance requirements for the golf course and the garden overall, even if the nutria do continue to dig and burrow.
I'll just pipe up and say, yeah, Caitlin, you captured the maintenance pieces for the golf folks in the garden, I think, really well from a parks perspective.
Well, cool. We're a little bit over on time, so I suppose should wrap it up. But thank you all for this work. Is it principally funded at this point, or is there still more funds being sought for this project?
I can respond to that. This is Amy. And right now we have funding for the feasibility study, but the way the Army Corps operates is that as they're sort of concluding one phase, the city, need to work through our congressional delegation to get their continuing funding for future phases. So that's kind of where we are now.
Well, glad to, well, hear about some progress and, any way the community can help support those efforts. Always glad to highlight and uplift. I guess we'll just wrap it up here and just thank you all so much. Fascinating project. Hope to see it, move forward quickly and go through the motions. And yeah, just thank you all again so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate being here.
Thank you so much for having us and everybody who attended. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Machu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, have a good night.
Yeah.
So my
You too.
laptop's bouncing all around the screen. Hey, so up next we have Building Better 82nd with Brianna, and I think you're joined by Brian.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having us. Our colleague Julia Reed may also be joining. I told her 8 o'clock, so I'm sure she'll be in a few minutes here. Yeah, thanks so much.
We also had like several attendees email and say like they will be reviewing the recording later. I think, the beautiful weather has gotten the best of Portland.
Oh, yeah, yeah, get out there, enjoy it while you can. Cool. We have a few slides. Since it's such a small group, I guess, stop us at any time. I also have, we have kind of concept designs at this point for each block intersection of the projects that are, in design on 82nd Avenue. So we can look through those if you want. So just feel free to direct us. We'll start and then you can tell us where you want to go.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. I'm going to share the screen. You all seeing a presentation?
Yeah, it's coming through great.
Good. Okay. So maybe just quick introduction. My name is Brianna Orr. I'm a project manager at PBOT and mostly working on 82nd Avenue these days, which is really great. And we have a large team of folks working on 82nd Avenue. So just one of many, and happy to be here and chat with you. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, I can. Hey everyone, I am Brian Poole. I am a capital project manager, not working on 82nd Avenue. Well, or at least not directly on this project, but working on a project that you'll hear a little bit more about in Brentwood, Darlington. That's related to this to 82nd. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks, Brian. So we have a bunch of stuff we're hoping to chat with you about, kind of give a broad overview of 82nd Avenue and where we're at with our projects and our work. Talk a little bit about safety and high crash areas. We can talk about the 60% concept design for major maintenance projects. So that's the one of our big projects that we're open for public comment right now through the end of March. So another week and a half or so. And then I know you all were interested in the Ramona, Tolman, and Lambert project as well. So we can look at those designs and then leave time for Brian to chat about Brentwood, Darlington as well. So 82nd Avenue, as you probably know, was transferred ownership from the state to the city in 2022. And it includes the area between Lombard and Clatsop. And I think these notes are a few areas that the blue circles here are a few areas where ODOT still retains jurisdiction over a couple intersections, well, 4 intersections there. So, but we get the rest. And we have a ton of projects happening on 82nd Avenue. And because of the sheer size of 82nd, we've split it up into somewhat manageable pieces for us to deliver. We also have funding that comes from a mix of places. So that kind of defines how we deliver the projects as well, or how we define the projects. So we can have 2 buckets we call critical fixes, which is all the near-term work that's happening. It actually started in 2023 and it goes through 2026. So that includes a major maintenance project, paving, lighting, signals, ramps, corridor-wide street lighting project, 6 crossings projects, and additional signal rebuilds. And then we also have the Civic Corridor projects, which will be in design and construction between 2026 and 2030. So that'll look like additional safety and maintenance projects. They're currently being identified and prioritized. And then also identifying a parallel bike network and projects that would improve the parallel bike network, as well as a transit project that Metro and TriMet are leading, and we're partnering with them on.
You pause on that parallel bike network. Are we just talking about 70s and 80s greenways, or are we talking about enhancement or additional?
Yes, and parallel as well as crossing 82nd. Yeah, but I think we heard certainly throughout the outreach that we've been doing in the past few years and planning work that if we're not building bike lanes on 82nd as part of this near-term work, and so really needing to make sure that those parallel greenways are easy to understand, easy to navigate, safe, comfortable, all those things. So we know that especially on I think the 80s greenway needs some more work.
And just to confirm, if people aren't like familiar, like the access, like bikes on 82nd, essentially be lack of right of way, right? And it's
sure.
like a city bikeway, not a major city bikeway. Well, it's a major transit route, for example, and other design factors.
Yeah, and I may have a slide on that. I don't, but I'll go to this slide, which is kind of talking about both the 70s Greenway, 80s Greenway, and then the streets that we've identified for greenways to cross or bike facilities to cross. So connecting folks from those networks to destinations and businesses along 82nd. Excuse me. So yeah, that's the goal there. So things that we've heard so far, we've been doing, well, there's been a lot of work just and community advocacy even before the jurisdictional transfer happened. And so we've been hearing about community priorities for several years now. And here's what we've been hearing just in the last couple of years in terms of prioritizing safe crossings of 82nd, improving transit, fixing the potholes, slower speeds, lighting, sidewalks and trees, parallel bike routes, human trafficking, decreasing cut through traffic, and supporting existing businesses, and also ensuring that trying to prevent displacement as well of existing businesses and residents. So a lot of priorities. Some of these we will be addressing as part of our near-term work, and then we'll have more work to do as part of that longer-term projects. And so here's a little bit of the vision for 82nd Avenue. And I think, I'm sure my colleague Julia will pop on right as soon as I finish her slides here, but she could speak a little bit better to how the vision has been come up. I know that we have our community advisory group, which advises staff about and came up with the vision for 82nd. So it really, I think, speaks to all those priorities that we heard from the community. So really making sure it's tree rich, a transit street, thriving, responding to community and business needs, a comfortable place for walking, biking, and rolling, and safer and more accessible.
Could you?
So that's where. Yeah, go ahead.
Elaborate on the prior slide. I like most of these things. I see the direct relationship to transportation, planning, human trafficking. Like, what factor is transportation planning factor into that? Like preventing or addressing?
Yeah, this one I struggle with how PBOT, with the tools that we have today, can really address human trafficking, but certainly I know that some jurisdictions, and I think more at the state level, have become more proactive around trafficking, as it is it involves transportation, the movement of people illegally. So I think, but I'm not aware of tools that we have to necessarily address it through, besides the built environment sort of work around making 82nd Avenue, you know, more visible, like lighter with street lights, and just a safer place to walk and be.
I can
So-
chime in on this a little bit, Brianna.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. This is Julia Reed. I'm a senior transportation planner with PBOT, and I'm the program manager for PBOT's Building a Better 82nd Avenue program. And I just wanted to add that the human trafficking, we know it's a big problem, as Brianna was talking about, and the police bureau has been actively doing missions on 82nd Avenue and elsewhere in the city to work to address this. I don't have any other answers beyond that. It's been a long-standing problem. It continues to be a problem.
I suppose by transferring to its like civic corridor status and eyes on the street, drawing people to 82nd day and night, all have positive social benefits. So
Definitely.
it's a little bit of an indirect approach here.
I know the Bureau of Development Services has been doing some more citations for building violations that are in buildings where that are sort of centers for crime and trafficking and drugs and associated issues.
Thank you for the additional context. I was just kind of figuring out like how does it relate to the transportation scope of this project, and that's some fascinating considerations. Parallel tangent efforts.
Sure, and I think like to further address that, when we talk about building a better 82nd, it also it's a transportation focused collection of projects, yes, but there's also an work that's happening with the 82nd Avenue Community Coalition, which is led by Zachary Lawrenson from Oregon Walks, and in conjunction with Metro and several of the other bureaus of the city, Housing and Prosper and BPS, they're working on an equitable development strategy that's going to accompany the transit project. And part of that is seeking to tie together a lot of these disparate threads that relate to all the many issues that are important to communities connected to 82nd Avenue.
Cool. Very exciting.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. I may have gotten through all your slides almost. I walked through the vision here by just really reading what's on the page, but Julia, if you want to provide more context about how this vision came to be, that probably would be great.
Sure. So the vision, when we talk about 82nd Avenue, like I said, it's a collection of projects, but the overarching themes that are important in the vision for 82nd Avenue and the work that we are doing is that we want 82nd Avenue to be safer and more accessible. We want a tree-rich environment in 82nd Avenue. It's going to be a transit street. Brianna may have mentioned the transit project that is currently in the planning phase. PBOT's working in conjunction with Metro and TriMet to position 82nd Avenue for federal funding for a transit administration grant. We want the corridor to be thriving. We want it to be a place where businesses and community and folks who are currently living there are able to continue to live there in the future. We want to be more comfortable for walking, biking, and rolling. And then the last one, responding to community and business needs. This is in a lot of ways the most important and the hardest part, because sometimes the community includes a wide range of folks with a wide range of interests, and same with the business community, business needs, and sometimes these are at odds with each other. Next slide. Okay, great. Part of the work that we're doing on 82nd Avenue includes a bike network on intersecting and parallel streets. So we know that 82nd Avenue is not going to be a place where we're going to have bike lanes on the corridor itself, but we need to, and the reason for that is because any additional space that's available on 82nd Avenue will go towards the higher classification mode category on 82nd Avenue, and that is transit. Transit is is in our TSP a higher priority than bicycle transportation on this particular street. That said, we need to be able to provide convenient, comfortable access for folks traveling by bicycle to destinations on 82nd Avenue. So our strategy includes a north-south continuous parallel network that is a 1/4 mile from 82nd Avenue. You'll see that as a line on the west side of 82nd in this little ladder diagram. And then a series of bike safe crossings on 82nd Avenue that are no more than 1/2 mile apart. Next slide. This is just to highlight the transit project that I mentioned earlier. This is something that we're jointly studying with Metro and TriMet and working towards a locally preferred alternative for the transit project in the spring of next year. Next slide. Hand it back over to Brianna.
Cool. So all of our near-term work was really influenced and informed by safety history that we see on 82nd Avenue. So on this slide, we have kind of a heat diagram of 82nd and where we have vision zero crashes. So those are the fatal and serious injury crashes. And so you see kind of the hot spots in Northeast here around Halsey and I-84, kind of coming down to Gleason, and then also an area between Division and Powell. And those blue boxes on top of those are the segments that we chose for major maintenance project. And so they directly correlate with those, kind of highest safety needs. We have other projects as well. Like we have a project at Gleason and Davis. So there's other things happening, but so this just has a kind of a summary of what we've seen with safety along the corridor. We have an average of 2 deaths and 13 serious injuries per year. And that's 5% of the citywide totals. And then when we take a look at some of the contributing factors to those crashes, we see, dark conditions, especially near Halsey. So street lighting will really hopefully help with that. We see a lot of driveways crashes related to driveways, especially between Division and Foster. And then left turns not at signals. So that's related to driveways, also between Powell and Division. So really, when we kind of look at this and summarize the street lighting as well as the left turns that happen in and out of areas without a signal, those are things that we really are wanting to focus on with these near-term improvements. So we have, as we mentioned, a number of projects building a number of things. Some of this work started last year, so we had a striping and signing project, as well as a traffic signal technology project to get all of our traffic signals kind of talking to each other so that we can time the signals together, reduce high-end speeding along the corridor. That work is complete. We're still doing a little bit of programming with the signal timing. And then we have a couple things under construction, including the signalized pedestrian crossings. We have 6 of these currently under construction. And then we have street lighting as part of this package that is starting very soon. We're just waiting on materials to come in for our contractor to start that work. And then what's coming up is the major maintenance project is really a lot of pavement, a lot of curb ramps, as well as a lot of traffic signals coming to the corridor. So all that work is starting this year, as soon as summer or early fall, and continuing through 2026. And then just focusing on the major maintenance project, this slide has a summary of what we're building through that project. So it's 2 segments, northeast from Fremont to Schuyler and southeast from Mill to Foster. 2.5 miles of repaving, over 288 curb ramps, areas of sidewalk spot widening, 10 new or upgraded traffic signals, 2 new signalized pedestrian crossings, and then we estimate about 250 trees between the medians and then along areas where we're widening the sidewalk. And then on the right-hand side is just a rendering of current conditions. This is at Southeast Mitchell, looking south towards Foster Road, next to SF Supermarket. And there's a before and after. So the after, has this wide median island with new trees and vegetation, and then wider sidewalks on either side that also support tree planting there.
No, like on the urban heat island map that Portland State produced, that parking lot right there is like one of the brightest points in the whole city, or it's near them.
Yeah, I believe it. There's a lot of parking area right around here, a lot of concrete.
Is there a plan for like maintenance of the street trees? I guess I just raised the question because I've seen some recent plans at Portland Parks fail in recent years, given the heat.
Yeah,
Climate change.
great. Yeah, great question. We have established through our contractor, they'll be maintaining the trees for 3 years as part of this contract. So that should get them established. It's longer than our typical contract would be for maintenance, so giving them some extra time. After that point, the trees that are along the sidewalk are the responsibility of the property owner. And then the trees and the median island is our responsibility of the city.
Sorry,
the
just that last
yeah.
point, the median, can you say that again?
Yeah, the trees in the median islands, those are the responsibility of the city because they're between the curbs. So the city would need to maintain those.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just mention too, we are doing a number of things to give these trees the best chance at thriving. We are going to be excavating those median islands all the way down to soil, so the roots can have a lot more area to grow. And we're also selecting trees that are drought tolerant, and we think both our landscape architect and urban forestry think that they are, good trees to have in this context. So hopefully we won't have a repeat of that park issue.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. So major maintenance, the 60% design is available now for comments. It goes through block by block on the project extents. So you can really dive in and see if you're interested in a particular area, or if you live right off the corridor, you can take a look and see what's happening on 82nd near you. And this is all updated from our 30% design, which we released this time last year. And after that design release, we did a bunch of public engagement, heard from a lot of folks, took in their comments. We went door to door to businesses along the project extents. And so this is the result of that feedback, made, changes and tweaks, especially to access points along the corridor, and making sure that, freight delivery and businesses have what they need to do their day-to-day. So I can add this link in the chat as well. And then we're really interested in feedback and comments through the end of the month. And then where we're headed from here with this particular project, we're finalizing designs this spring. In summer, we'll be going to City Council for approval of the contract, and then construction could begin as soon as summer or early fall. That construction will probably look like underground work at, sewers, like electrical conduit, and then maybe seeing some ADA ramps starting this winter. And so that'll be some of the more visible and I think really exciting work. So that's that project. As you know, we also have an additional project in Southeast, the Ramona, Tolman, and Lambert Crossings project is what we call it. And there's 2 signalized pedestrian crossings, one at Ramona, one at Tolman, and a traffic signal at Lambert. So the Ramona and Tolman look pretty, this before and after image is actually at Ramona. So you can see an example of this. So it's a T intersection, as you probably know. And so it has a median island here. So what that does is Ramona becomes a ride in and ride out intersection. The pedestrians will have a walk signal, and drivers driving along 82nd Avenue will have a traditional red, yellow, green signal there. So I can pop this into the chat as well. This project is at 95% design. And so still, can take comments, but we're getting pretty close to being final. And we are coordinating really closely with the ODOT paving project that's happening in these same extents. They're doing work right over here, in fact. And so we're going to try to, make this as seamless as possible if we can.
Will
yeah, go ahead.
will Tolman and Lambert have a similar treatment as Ramona, or
Yeah, so
Okay.
Yeah, so Tolman will have a very similar treatment as Ramona. Lambert will look a bit different. It'll just look like a traditional traffic signal. I can actually go through those real quick. Hold up my images here for us. So are you seeing a different map now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is Ramona. The crossing and signal will be at the north leg of Ramona, which is here. South leg of Ramona is here. So we'll still have legal pedestrian crossings on the south leg of Ramona, but we won't have that signal. So the striped pedestrian signal and striped crosswalks will be at that north leg. And so that's what this one looks like. This one's Tolman. Tolman is a neighborhood greenway or future neighborhood greenway. So including those bike boxes there is important to get folks safely across. Tolman will also be a right in and a right out street here. And then drivers will still be able to take a right turn on Tolman, but not a left. So this one's a little bit smaller footprint, but very similar concept. And then the Lambert signal will not have a median island through it, mostly because the neighborhood to the east here doesn't have a lot of other options in terms of getting in and out. And so really needing to maintain this left-hand turn into that neighborhood. And this will include, a traffic separator for improving safety here, and then the curb ramps. So that one's a little bit, less with access management.
I noticed there's no cross bikes. Is that because of like traffic volume or value engineering, or I guess what's the design choice?
Yeah, this is a really simplified concept. And so I would have to go back to our plan set and see if the cross bikes are part of this or not. If they're not, I imagine it's because there's not actually a conflict that should be happening because there's a signal. So typically we're using those cross bikes to indicate, that drivers should be aware and look for bikes. But if everybody has, a signal and have a red light, then there really shouldn't be that issue. But I'll double check, Machu.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, let me go back to our presentation here, and then I'll hand it off to Brian to talk about Darlington.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I'll let you control the slides. There we go. Yeah, so just wanted to sort of share about a project that actually is in construction already. We have started work on Flavel right now, filling in some sidewalks, and we're excited to get going on this project. I know it's been a community priority for the Brentwood-Darlington neighborhood for 7-8 years now, and so really excited to get this one across the finish line. It's sidewalk infill and more crossings on both Duke and Flavel streets, and then we're also going to be constructing a neighborhood greenway on Knapp and Ogden streets. You can see on the map on the right sort of how that jogs from Knapp to Ogden and then back to Knapp. And the crossing is actually right there on 82nd, between where it transitions from Ogden back down to Knapp, and it will connect to the 80s Greenway. So excited about starting it. Construction did start last month, and we're anticipating this to go really through probably late fall into the early winter of 2024. And project websites at the bottom you can see. And if you go to the next slide, it just sort of zooms in a bit more on what that crossing will look like. Somewhat similar to the ones we just saw, but it's going to have a two-way cycle track on the west side of 82nd Avenue between Knapp and Ogden. And so you can, if you're biking or walking, you can go along that west side, and then it'll be a traffic signal with a median to get you across the street, with new ADA ramps, and like I said, a median full signal. So this project will likely be sort of at the more at the back end of the project, so likely starting in August, early September. Some of that is to avoid the ODOT work that's happening right now, but also we're trying to procure some of the signal poles and those types of things. So it's coming, and we're excited, and hopefully it's a good complement to the other work that you just heard about on 82nd Avenue. So thanks.
Well, thank you. That's one of the things I've been hearing from neighbors in that part of town, like in Lentz and whatnot, is about this major maintenance failing to kind of reach that neighborhood. And I think these complementary projects like, Sherritt and Nap Ogden, I think are a good thing to be aware of if it falls outside this other projects deliverables. So looking forward to it. And I know like recently, this was it like a year or two ago, the city did a little bit of eminent domain to make sure sidewalk widths were accurate in this part of the neighborhood, which was great to see that necessary work happening.
Yeah, we had to get a lot of right away for this project. So it's that's one of the reasons why it took so long to get to construction. But
well, exciting. Thank you.
All right, I think that's what we have for you. But yeah, happy to go through anything or more detail or look at any maps. So yeah, take any questions.
And I do apologize, Jeffrey didn't provide an opportunity if you want to say hello earlier. But thank you all for this like update. We don't have a time certain date. Do we have council right now on?
Not time certain, but we're aiming for mid-June. So yeah, I will definitely let you know. Be great to have some folks come out and let folks know that they're supportive, if that's how you feel.
I mean, yeah, like you always hear about the downsides, but the positive is really important too, to demonstrate the need and demand for these important projects.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess a little bit early, but that's okay. It's still warm out. So thank you all again so much. Always a pleasure to talk to you and hear these updates. And
yeah, thanks so much, Matthew.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks. Yeah, good night.
Night.
Thanks for joining, Bill.
Sure, happy to be here.
And I guess we'll just end the meeting now, but have a good night.